We'll have time. All right, so let's start off on number 2 here. So we're going to solve these with the quadratic formula. So as a reminder, we got the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then that's all over 2a. And so here I see I have my a, b, and c, just those numbers in order, not the variables attached, just the numbers. So I'm just going to plug them in. So this will be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 2, and then that's all over 2 times 5. So now I'll simplify it, so the negative can just become positive. Inside the square root, I have 25 for negative 5 squared, and then I got to multiply these three numbers together. So this is negative 20 times negative 2, which is actually positive 40, and then that's all over 10. I cannot reduce it yet because I need to see if I can simplify this any further. It's just become radical 65 over 10. And if I try to break down 65, it's just 13 and 5. So no twins there, which means I don't have a number in front to do my heart reducing. So I just am able to stop right there because I cannot reduce those numbers. I'm not allowed to reduce a number inside the radical like 65 with these ones that are outside. All right, next up, number 4. So for this one, we always want to get one side to 0 first. So I would add this 8 over. And so this will be 4m squared plus 8m. And let's see, 22 minus 8. What is that? All right, 14. So I'll put it as a negative 14 since the 22 is bigger. I noticed that I can divide all these by 2. You don't have to do this, but it does make the numbers a little bit smaller. So I always like to if possible. So now I can just do it like this. So now I'll use the quadratic formula again. So I get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So now I'll simplify in the radical. So we get plus or minus the square root of 16. And then negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 times negative 7 is plus 56 all over 4. So now we'll do our addition. All right, so now I'll add these two together. 16 plus 52. Oh no, plus 56. So that'll be a 2 and a 72. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 72 all over 4. Now I need to break down this radical 72. So I know that that's 9 and 8, and 9 is 3 and 3, and 8 is 2 and 4, which the 4 is 2 and 2. So of all the numbers that I couldn't break down anymore, I got twins there, and then a loner right there. So the twins will each go outside. I'll set this up. I still got the negative 4 there, plus or minus. The twins, I have a 3 and a 2, so they're going to multiply outside, so that's going to make a 6. And then the loner 2 stays in the house, and that's all over 4. So then my last step, I'll just reduce these all with the heart. So then I get, I can only divide them all by 2. So I get negative 2 plus or minus 3 rad 2 all over 2. All right, next up we got number 6 here. So I'm going to first get one side to 0. So I'm going to subtract this stuff over. I'm going to put it in the usual form. So 5b squared minus 2b minus 4 equals 0. So now we can use quadratic formula. So we'll do x equals negative 2. So that's negative b. Plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2 times a. So now we'll simplify this. Negative 2 would just be positive 2, plus or minus the square root of 4. And then I got to multiply these numbers, so that's negative 20 times negative 4, which is positive 80. And then that's all over 10. And so now I'm going to add those together inside the radical. So 2 plus or minus the square root of 84 over 10. So now I need to break this down. I think I can do, let's see, I can do 4, I know, and that would be 4 and 21. So that's 2 and 2, 7 and 3. So it looks like the only thing going outside is the 2's. So 2 plus or minus 2 radical, and then these guys, the loners, will multiply back together and give me 21 all over 10. And finally, we'll just reduce this all with the heart, dividing everything by 2 in this case, the biggest number that they all will. And that'll be 1 plus or minus the square root of 21 all over 5. All right, this one's just asking us for the discriminant. So that is just the b squared minus 4ac, the inside on the quadratic formula. So that's all I'm going to do here. So for number 8, I will do 1 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times negative 1. So that is 1, and then this would be a positive 8 right there. But then when I multiply that by negative 1, it actually turns into negative 8. And so this comes out to negative 7. So that's the discriminant right there. And then what that means is that this actually has no real solutions. Anytime this comes out negative, we have no real solutions. It's a negative inside of a radical, which is kind of not allowed. Now, it is that the answer that on the answer key actually says 2 imaginary solutions. And that kind of means the same thing, because if we don't have any real solutions, then they are imaginary. All right, next up, number 10 here. So this one, same idea. We're just going to do our b squared minus 4 times a times c. So this will be 30. This will be 36. And then these numbers back here, negative 4 times 3 will be positive 12. Positive 12 times negative 3 is negative 36. So the discriminant actually comes out to 0. And this one actually means we have one real solution. That is every time the discriminant comes out to 0. All right, last one on this set. We do need to get one side to 0 before we do this. Just like the quadratic formula, the discriminant, we need one side at 0. And then I'll do my b squared minus 4 times a times c. And so this, when I multiply these numbers, actually this is just 1. Multiply these numbers is negative 12 times negative 2, so that's actually plus 24. So our discriminant is 25, which means 2 real solutions. Anytime that's positive, you're going to get the 2 real solutions. All right, next up, we want to solve these by factoring. Anytime we're factoring, we always want to get one side to 0. So I'm going to subtract that over, and I'll add the 5 over. And so I get 5a squared. The 9a had nobody to combine with, so I'm just going to leave it there. And then plus 4 equals 0. So now we'll factor this. We're thinking of 2 numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 9. So that's just 5 and 4. However, I need to use my grouping here since I have the 5a squared out front. And then I will split this up as these numbers here, which is 5a and 4a. And you can do that in the other order as well. So now I'll do my grouping here. So I can GCF out of the first group 5a, leave me with a plus 1. And the second group I can also take out 4. Or I can take out 4, which also leaves me with a plus 1. So that means my parentheses are 5a plus 4 for the stuff outside, and then a plus 1 for the stuff inside. However, I am still equal to 0, which means I need to split these up and set them equal to 0 individually. So on this one, I'm going to subtract 4. So 5a equals negative 4, and then divide by 5, and a equals negative 4 over 5. This one is a lot easier. Just a plus 1 equals 0. I'll subtract the 1, and a equals negative 1. All right, these ones we want to solve by completing the square. Now, completing the square is the only one where you don't want one side to 0. You actually want your numbers over on the other side. So I'm going to add that over, so I get now 4. Now, I see that all of these can divide by 2, so I definitely want to do that. So I have x squared plus 2x equals 2. Then I need to do my b over 2 squared. That's the big kind of idea of completing the square. So in this case, it'll be 2 over 2 squared, which is 1 squared, which is 1. And I'm going to add that 1 to both sides. So I get x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 3. Now I'm going to factor this, thinking of 2 numbers that multiply to 1 and add to 2. So that would be 1 and 1. So I get x plus 1 squared equals 3. I will then square root both sides, so I get x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root of 3. And then finally, I'll just subtract the 1 over, so x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 3. Next up here, I'm going to solve these by taking square roots. So I first need to isolate the squared. So in this case, the negative 6 is multiplying, so I'm going to divide it over, so I get x squared equals 5. And then I'll square root both sides, so I get x equals plus or minus radical 5. Since I created the square root, I need that plus or minus.